I want it to change, but without doing any of the work.
Why don't you want to do the work?
William brings the heat. His questions are always so good. Tyson, I kind of think this guy's going to be a little bit edgy, a little tough to get along with, might be kind of a punk. That was my assumption.
Arrogance mixed with self-deprecation. Like there's like a balance between the two. We are the Midlife Crisisses. Each and every week, we are deteriorating as we get closer to death. I am one of the co-hosts, Tyson Apostol. I'm here with Bradley Hasemayer, soft S to Z sound, and the top underwater videographer west of the Mississippi, William Drumm.
Amazing.
Hello, hello.
And each week we ask a question. One of us asks a question. The other two do not know the question coming. And we talk about it. Always has something to do with our midlife. Usually has something to do with something that happened in the last week. And I think this week, William has the question. Is that right, William?
Yeah, I've got a question for you guys.
Oh, boy.
So how has your self-image changed through your midlife crises?
Man, let me just lead with William brings the heat. His questions are always so good. They really are. It's not like light and fluffy. This is a solid
when
question.
I bring one, I've got
kudos.
Yeah, and I am going to be really real here because that's what you all came to listen to is realness, honesty, and I think the audience connects with that the most. So I'm going to keep it straight here.
Good.
I love my face. I still love my face.
Yeah.
Even after all these years, 45 years. I mean, there's things like my nose has got a little hook to it. I don't love that, but like, it's like, whatever. I still have a whole head of hair. I love that. My body is soft. There was a time.
We told you last week you got to get tattoos. That changes things.
There was a time when I would pop my shirt off no matter what. I remember summers where the goal was to go as much as I could without a shirt. So I would keep a shirt in my car in case I had to go into 7-Eleven for anything. But otherwise, popped it off in the car, went shirtless.
You have kind of a McConaughey vibe to you. All right. Just take my shirt off everywhere I go. Yeah.
And I was very, very lean because I was a pro cyclist. I was a swimmer growing up. And I look back on some of those pictures. I was like, I didn't know I was that shredded. Like I should have taken more advantage of how shredded I was in my 20s.
My shirt even less.
Yeah. And I
shouldn't have put it on for 7-Eleven.
The first season of Survivor, I always had my shirt off. I ran around naked a few times.
Nice.
Very proud of my fit yet slender body. Some would say very, very thin, too thin, but I like that. And now I'll take my, like, if I'm going to the pool, like, I'm not like swim dad shirt. Like, I don't, you know.
Wait,
like
explain swim dad shirt. I think I know what you're talking about, but that's hilarious. I've never heard it like titled something.
Like the sun shirts, like what you put on a kid so you don't have to put sunscreen on them. Dads wear those, but it's not so they don't have to put sunscreen on. It's to hide their softness.
And
I wear one of those specifically so I don't have to put sunscreen on.
And also to hide your softness?
No, actually it highlights my physique.
They do highlight your physique.
A sun shirt looks pretty nice.
They do highlight your physique if you have a physique, but if you get those skin tight ones, they accentuate your floppiness. And so you have to get a baggy one, but then everyone knows you're hiding shit under there.
Oh, the baggy ones are the worst.
They are so disgusting looking, but they're better than the flab that's underneath. And so it's like, I'm not to the point where I have to wear a baggy swim shirt. I don't wear a tight swim shirt because
so you're right in the middle.
Worse.
You're probably wearing what, like a large, medium?
I wear a large
sizing,
but
I would length.
Medium,
you got
tall,
long arms. You're
large,
tall.
Yeah. I'll take a shirt off at the pool or swimming or whatever, but I'm not proud. I'm not like everyone's drinking it in. I'm ashamed. And
ashamed? I don't know if ashamed. Are you really?
I'm not ashamed.
Okay. I just
but I'm
want
not
to be
like,
clear.
I'm not like, oh, everyone's drinking this in right now. Everybody's checking me out. Like I know that they aren't. And so, but it's like, but I could get in shape. I know I'm only 45. I could still get shredded. And for me, that's for some reason enough. Like I can go to the pool and see like some jacked dude and be like, that
I could do
asshole
that.
just knew. Yeah. I should tell that asshole that I could get in as good a shape as him. I'll just, like when you approach somebody and you're like, oh, you're a swimmer, huh? What's your fastest time?
Yeah.
You didn't know I was a swimmer and I used to swim twice as fast as you, did you? Like, that's the same thing. It's like, you look shredded, but I once had a vein that went from my face all the way down to my toes without a break in it anywhere. You could see it through my buttocks and everything go straight through. That's how lean I was. Even through the glutes, you could see the veins.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
You were giving blood and they were just like, this guy's a dream.
Yes.
I can see
Yes.
every
in the
vein.
face.
Compliments every time I went in to get blood. They were just like, you are so easy. Thank you so much for having such vascularity. So that's where I'm at now. And I want it to change, but without doing any of the work.
Why don't you want to do the work? Why? What's keeping you from, if you want it to change and you know you could, like, is it the work itself? Do you not like working out?
I don't like working out. I don't like going to the gym. I don't
Any kind of workout, running.
I like playing pickleball.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's true.
True.
Hiking is fine. I love the ocean. I love the water. I keep telling William to make me his sidekick.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
I would body surf all day long or snorkel all day long if there were options for either of those two things. So that's it. Yeah. I could get in shape, but I just hate, like, nothing about going to the gym is fun for me.
Well, let me
what
ask this.
about,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, William.
I was going to say, what about non-physical elements of your self-image? Because your self-image is way more than just like your body and how you feel about yourself. It's kind of,
It's like who you are, right?
Yeah,
As a
who you are.
person. Yeah.
I was actually thinking about that yesterday, and I didn't even know this question. I was like, I'm probably about as good a person as I'm ever going to be, like right now. Like I think I was probably kind of a prick when I was younger, more arrogant, had a better body. And as all of that's deteriorated, and I've really tried to be kind to everyone and supportive as much as I can to people around me and helpful and part of society. And I like to do that. But at some point, like, am I getting better? Probably, maybe, no, I don't know. I don't think so, really. I think I've kind of like plateaued or peaked, and I don't think I'm going to deteriorate from that. But I'm happy with myself, I think. And when I was younger, I definitely thought I was better than everybody at everything. And now that I'm older, I just think that I used to be better than everybody at everything. And now I'm not necessarily, and other people can thrive because I'm not in my peak anymore and I support them.
You got out of the way so humbly, so magnanimous of you to just step aside and let the rest of culture catch up. And then you're like, I could be there.
Surpassed, maybe even surpassed
but
me.
not because you stopped it. You just, because you chose to actively leave that role.
Yeah.
right?
That's wow.
Okay.
Wow, what a man. What a man. What a mighty good man.
But where do I go from here? How do I get, like, I don't know. I am happy with myself. I think that my self-image has never been one of those ones where I've really poo-pooed on myself too hard. I've always, some would say probably too much. I love myself too much.
When I found out that we were going to Banff as a trip, which if people are just now checking out our podcast, that's how we all originally met, on a Citizen Watch branded adventure trip, which was great. I saw the list of people coming and I was like, Tyson, I kind of think this guy's going to be a little bit edgy, a little tough to get along with, might be kind of a punk. That was my assumption. Yeah, because that's like celebrity culture a little bit.
Just because of the name? Like,
well, no, like I knew who you were and I knew kind of your background.
You're coming as like an influencer. And like
exactly. So there were like all these things
figure.
kind of stacked against you. And I was pleasantly surprised when we interacted that you were affable, very approachable, funny,
some would say
self-effacing.
maybe the most approachable on the trip.
Oh,
And
easily the most approachable. Except for the time that it was like 11 o'clock at night, everyone was wiped and you were talking to the van driver. And just kept going.
And
but
I know
have
everybody
kids, so I'm
hated it.
used to that.
I
but
knew everybody hated it.
I was like, this guy just lost a lot of points that he garnered 24 hours ago. But But to that point, I think people should know that you are that way. I feel like you have at least what you were talking about and are like meeting you at this point in your life. I feel like you're, a very giving, very like for this podcast to even exist. You were the one who suggested it.
Yeah.
You and William have both been so on point for like setting up the channel and doing all these things and talking about graphics and logos and all this kind of stuff. Not to mention both of you obviously are super busy too. So I definitely think you're better than you were based on what you have explained who you were.
Yeah. And I think that even back then when I was younger and more arrogant and prettier, you still would have liked me. I think that you would have my dad was always shocked at how many people liked me. He's like, I just don't get it.
That right there is that's a whole nother.
I don't get it.
My dad was shocked that people liked me. He didn't like me and he didn't think anybody else did. So he was always shocked.
Well, I think he said, why do people like you so much? I think that yeah.
Wow.
And so so I think that back then there was this aura, and it's probably what you were feeling before you met me was this aura that I carried with me when I was younger. And then once you got through that and communicated with me and had interactions with me, generally they went well. And if they didn't, I knew immediately and I knew how to push your buttons, and I would push all of them as quickly as possible to test your exact limits before you broke completely.
That's really impressive. I appreciate that level of attentiveness to crushing people's spirits. There's not a lot of people that are that committed. So way to go.
Some people would just brush it off.
Yeah.
Not Tyson. Double down. Focus.
Yeah.
Is that blood? Attack.
It's because I thought people were being ridiculous. So if I rubbed people the wrong way because of my arrogance mixed with self-deprecation, there's a balance between the two. But if I could tell that somebody was just not into it at all, I went double hard on it. And I knew, you could tell immediately. 5 people laughing, 1 person scowling or pretending to be bored or not enjoying it. And I was like, okay, I know where my target is. And then I immediately just shift all efforts towards pushing that person's limits so far past what they are willing to accept.
Hopefully that person is listening to this podcast because they're definitely in the middle of a midlife crisis after the abuse they suffered at the hands.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But the thing is, I would still do that to this day. If we had showed up on that citizen trip and there was just 1 person who was so annoyed by me, that person would just be the person I followed around the entire trip. I would
imagine there were a few on that trip who would qualify for that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there were people that were less enthusiastic about my company, but all in all, I think everybody enjoyed me for the most part.
But isn't that part of growing up too? Is the DGAF, don't give a fuck. There's a little bit of as you get older, you're less worried about pleasing everyone. You're less worried about everyone liking you.
Mm-hmm.
You're less worried about being the most popular, the coolest, the fastest, the best, the most cut, all those things that I think when you're younger, you're looking for something to hang your hat on, as an identifier. And when as you get older, you realize, A, you've met people like that, and that's not who you wanted to be anyway.
Yeah.
Or B, you realize it's kind of impossible because that's a moving target and it's, chasing after the wind kind of idea. So I think to some degree, it also shows your maturity that you're just kind of whatever.
I've always been like that. I've always thought that if people don't like me, it's their problem, not mine.
Yeah.
It really is a good philosophy to have. I think that for me getting older, that's been one of the best things is being able to shed some of that fear or just the feeling of people not liking you or not giving a fuck, whatever you want to call it. I think that's been huge for me and for my self-image is learning that people don't really care. So why do I care so much about what they think when they probably don't even think about me at all?
I think about you, but
thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Was that something you had to actively pursue, or is it just come with age?
I think both for sure. I think that part of it is just getting older and wiser, but yeah, I think that it's part of my midlife crisis journey. Part of my just like self-improvement journey is kind of trying to get rid of those things, because for what we do, like for what I do, it's so detrimental to feel like that. Like you have to be so confident in your own shoes, like Tyson is. Like anything,
be more like Tyson. That's what I'm hearing.
Anything other than that is just going to hold you back from sharing what you have to share your content, share your,
because you're an artist. And there's probably, you're looking at, you have some doubts sometimes when you share stuff, or or you want it to be perfect, and you're like thinking maybe in your head that it's not absolutely perfect, but it's like pretty close. Or then somebody gets online and is like, look at you do that with your GoPro, and then you're like, fuck off. Like it's, and I get that too with stuff I do, and those comments still can ruin my day sometimes. Like the
biggest thing though is just like realizing that almost nobody cares about you at all. Like you don't have to worry so much about that shit, because nobody cares about you. Everybody only cares about themselves. Everybody just cares about themselves. They don't give a fuck about you. They're focused on themselves, and you just need to remember that, I think. And I'm still working on that, but it's true. It's like it's the reality.
It is true. Like even the haters, they don't really care about you. They just see a thing, say a thing, and then they exit.
They're gone. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that hurt my feelings. What do I do? So you're right. So everyone cares about themselves. So you would suggest caring less about others and more about yourself.
I would suggest understanding that nobody gives a fuck about you, so that you're not afraid of putting yourself out there, because even when you put yourself out there, nobody's going to care. Like if they do care, it's great, but it's not to the level that you think. People aren't focused on you. People aren't thinking about you during their day. Yeah. You might be thinking about them thinking about you, but they're not thinking about you.
Everyone's thinking about everyone thinking about them, but nobody's thinking about them.
My mind is blowing right now. I'm trying to understand all that.
I like that.
William, I'm curious your perspective, because obviously we've talked about you're kind of reinventing yourself in some ways right now, as you have talked about this being just kind of a tough year. We also talked about like shaving your mustache, like you're getting back into things that that you want to be doing, whether it's Shaolin martial arts or these types of things. For your self-image, do you feel like are you kind of like almost going back to like, this is who I used to be and this is who I am now? Like, I'm just curious where you are in that, or if you feel like you're having to like, almost like your house, like, whatever crashed and you're going back to rebuild brick by brick.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's like I was forced into really rebuilding my self-image, because my self-image was built around my family, around like my relationship. And once I got divorced, that just wasn't there anymore. So if I didn't find a new self-image, then I would just be stuck in that like really dark place. So I had to rebuild my self-image, and I'm still working on it, of course, but it's also a combination when you're talking about like, it's kind of what I aspired to when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I didn't necessarily have like this vision of my future being like a father, husband. Like it wasn't built around having a family. That was never like my vision of my future. That just became my reality. So that became my self-image. And I loved it. Like I thrived in it. But once it was taken away, once I lost it, I had to come back and be like, okay, well, what did I want before I had this idea about myself? And what do I have to do to get to that again? And that's kind of what I'm working on now, is like the Shaolin Kung Fu stuff that I'm doing. And I've mentioned it here too, just traveling and doing things that I always envisioned myself doing when I was younger, but then through life, forgot about them, started to build this new self-image around being like a family man, and then losing that family, and then being like, okay, where am I now? Like, am I going to try to force myself into like a new family type of a situation so I can get that self-image back? Or am I going to step back to my younger self and remember who I wanted to be before any of that, and then try to figure out how to do that? And that's basically what I'm doing now, is remembering all the things that I loved when I was younger, things that I aspired towards, and doing the work that I think is necessary to really like love myself and feel confident in that new version of me. Because really, that version of me was the version of me that I always wanted for my life. And I don't take back anything about being the family man. I loved that too, but it really wasn't where I was headed when I was younger. And in some ways, even though it's been pretty awful, it's kind of a blessing too, because it does let me rediscover those elements of myself that were lost through the relationship and through just life's struggles.
Yeah. When you say that, I was like, I assumed I'd probably get married and have kids, but I never, like, that wasn't a thing that I also ever aspired to, or was just this is my goal. This is the end game. This is where I'm going to be. I just like lived my life because, like, I just saved money for going out to dinner that night. Like so I don't know that it's, I think maybe more as a guy, especially, that's not like, there aren't people who are just like in junior high, if you were like, yo, Tyson, what you gonna do? It's like, I'm gonna be a dad of 7. Like, I'm gonna be a pro athlete or a rock star or something, And so it's just like, I don't think, or I'm gonna, see the world. I'm gonna travel everywhere. My parents didn't see the world. I am, like, that type of thing. And so I don't think you're wrong in that, but I just think that for me, like, I don't know, Bradley, were you like in elementary school? Like, what do you want to be? A father?
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's kind of more of like
father
a
and a husband
society thing almost. It's not like,
it's also a state of life. Like, there's just assumptions that come with where you are at that point in your life, and you like a girl, and then it moves forward, and you're like, I guess we should get married. And you get married, and it's like, well, I guess we should have kids, and you have kids, and so I think that's how a lot of us as men, for the most part, this is speaking in huge generalizations, of course, definitely see life that way. I think also all three of us, because of what we do, clearly there's a part of our personality that's just kind of okay rolling with the punches. Yeah, 100%. We're not in 9-to-5 jobs with like fixed 401ks that are going to, like, we can reduce our anxiety because we know our future is safe. Like, we're kind of unique individuals within the spectrum of people already. So we have to remember that as well.
Right.
I think what's interesting too is, like, I certainly, William, I love your perspective of this. We talked about it last week too, which is like, you can either fight it or roll with it. And I think, I don't envy you at all, but what I do appreciate about what you're doing is, like, it's easy to just plateau as a person, as a human, as a dad, as a father, as a businessman or woman or whatever. Like, that's, I think like our human nature gets us to a place of like, what's the path of least resistance? And so you finally get there. And I think because life has pushed you out of that, you're now bringing 39 years of wisdom to a rebuilding of your house, as it were. And so that's kind of an interesting opportunity there. Something struck me. I was flipping through Instagram, and some guy at a coffee shop had a shirt that said 1% better every day. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting perspective. Like, but that reminded me of how active you have to be to chase that. When we're younger, we're in school, we're growing up, there's adolescence, but there's a structure around us that's causing us to grow as people. And then when you get out of school, it's college, it's job. But then, like, after a while, like, you kind of sort out how your life goes. And then that's when you can kind of shift into neutral, or you're like in 7th gear and you're just on the freeway. It's not like, a tough rally course kind of thing.
You have a car with 7 gears?
Yeah, I have a 7. Well, actually, we have an Acura MDX. It's 9 gears. Yeah, 9 speeds. Okay. The more speeds that automotive companies can put in, the better fuel economy. So now they're just like, it's like tractor trailers. Every tractor trailer action movie, there's like 4 of them, was like, and there's action happening. And then, actually, early Fast and Furious was like 9 speeds, but I'm only seeing 4 in the gearbox. I don't know what Dominic Toretto was doing. Yeah. It's all about the shift. But anyway, so I think from that perspective, this is really challenging me. Like, what are those places I can improve a little? Because hopefully at this point, we're fairly well-rounded, you know? Like, it's not like, man, yeah, but I am such a, you know, it's not like I hoard all my sunglasses and hats or shirts, you know. It's not like that. we're all better than that.
Wow. Yeah.
Hey, shots fired. I have too many jackets. I have too many bags. Those are my
jacket
I'm a
bag guy.
jacket and bag guy.
So I want to talk to you about that too, because I honestly had this pop in my head yesterday.
No way.
As
Dude,
I'm watching my daughter skateboard. And there's the saying about living vicariously through your children. And that's where I thought, like, okay, I have plateaued and I'm living vicariously through my child. And it's not that she has to win a gold medal. It's that I'm seeing her improve and I'm seeing her make progress. I'm seeing my kids make progress. And for me, that is making progress personally, because like you said, like, how do I personally get better? Like, I'm trying to be the best person I can, but like, am I going to read a book a day? No, I'm like, I got the internet to scroll. So like, I was like, I think that for me, having my kids make progress is
cool.
My own personal progress. And
that's a good perspective. I like that.
That's for me. So
it's fair too. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you are instrumental in their progress too. So their progress is kind of your progress, even if it's not, even if, you know, it's not totally vicarious because you're supporting it and you're helping it happen. So it's kind of your achievements too, in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I was, it's crazy because these things we're talking about right now yesterday flooded me. And I actually was like, I'm going to ask about living vicariously through kids, because it was always looked at when you heard it younger, it was like a negative thing. Like, oh, your dad could never win the World Series, so now he's forcing you to like play baseball to win the World Series. It's like, no, parents, I can only speak for myself. Parents just want to see their kids succeed and make also progress. And it's not about winning the World Series. It's not about going to the Olympics. It's about learning skills and talents and thriving in those and enjoying those and getting better, because that's what I think excites people in general. And so for me, it's like, I am never going to be a better cyclist than I was. I'm never going to be a better swimmer than I was. I'm never going to be faster than I was. I like all of those things. I can't.
But there's a lot of things that you can like start
like
and
what?
Get better at.
Like what?
Like, that's why, like, I think Kung Fu's been I've only been doing it for a month, but
yeah, it's
super fun because you see the progress like directly. And I think that that's kind of what you're talking about. And seeing the progress it's like working out. Like, if you don't see any results, you're going to quit because it's not very fun.
Yes.
But once you see those results, it just gets more fun. So I think that there's a lot of things that you could do in your life still that anybody could do at any age where they can see the progress. It's just figuring out what it is and like what excites you.
And playing devil's advocate here, even if I am getting better, I will still in my mind be like, but I'll never be as good as if I would have done this in my late 20s.
I was thinking about that too.
Okay.
Recently.
Yeah. Right. Is that a bummer, or is that
it's like I'm like thinking about 10 years from now, how I'm going to be this black belt Shaolin master.
Yeah.
But I'm like, imagine if I started when I was
49.
20.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
20, you'd be in the Olympics, dude. You'd be living vicariously through yourself.
That's epic.
That was another question that I was thinking about for another week. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think overall for me, self-image is one of those things that I think because my priorities of what is valuable and worth highlighting have evolved.
Yeah.
I think it's almost kind of like that's changing too, right? Like if you put who I am on paper and took it to, 16-year-old Bradley and you said, hey, these are your traits, the kind of the best or nothing Bradley at 16 that, was like played golf once and was like, because I, didn't break records, was throwing a club, punching the ground in baseball as a catcher because I didn't throw the guy out at second. Like my expectation was to be perfect, the best, absolute. And so I would look at that sheet and be like, well, why are you like number 30 out of how many, why are you, why is your income at this level? Why does your house look like this? Why don't you drive this car? Like there was a level of me that was like the best or nothing. I don't want anything else. And so, so I would have looked at like myself as like my self-image would have been like, I don't want to be that guy. But at the same time, like as that's evolved and changed and become, I think, a healthy balance because life changes and whatever. And you realize the people who are that way are terrible to be around.
Yeah.
And they can't hold friendships and they can't hold
And
down
they're
jobs.
sad.
They're
They don't seem
sad.
happy.
They're lonely.
Yeah.
There's really no win there, you know? I mean, right. It seems like, you know, people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or some of these like richest people in the world, to get to that place, you have to burn so many bridges, including yourself, that it's like, wait, what was the point even? So
Money.
for me,
Yes.
I've realized, okay, so there needs to be more balance. And so
Yeah,
I'm happy where I am. But I do think I'm kind of like challenged by you guys with the idea of like, what are those places I can grow? Can I be more generous with my time, talent, treasure, like with people? Can I be more involved, or even in other ways? Like, we talked about learning a language. Can I start a language and grow?
Why though?
Because there's a dopamine hit. I think there's something fun about like seeing growth. Like,
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly. It's all about seeing the growth.
I like growth. I like seeing numbers. Look, if you post something and you see numbers go up, that feels good because that's growth. If you post and you're like, my past 10 posts, we know William obviously working on a whole new YouTube page from scratch. That's a heavy lift right there. You're like, I worked 8 hours on that video. I got 32 views. What was the point? Exactly, right? So it's like, I like growth. I think there's something about that. And there's something about, Tyson, to your point, also mirroring that for our kids and showing that like when you hit adulthood, my parents just kind of like plateaued. And, you know, my dad still reads a ton of books, usually about weather, usually about war. Those are like his two favorite things.
Yeah.
Throw traffic in there and you've got every 60 or 70 year old parent in America.
Yeah.
It's raining. There's going to be traffic. Okay, I know. I'm going to go anyway. But I think, you know, there's something I want to demonstrate that for my kids, that like I don't hit midlife and then it's like, great job, let's coast to the end. But it's trying to figure out how do I do that, I guess.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like I'm just learning a language. I can speak some languages-ish, you know, like
pickleball language. Well, pickleball is something you've picked up. I think that you could see growth, right? How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, and I've been getting better at that.
5
but
years,
it's like I don't strive. My number one goal isn't to get better at pickleball. I'm just out there having fun. Yeah.
But
and I speak Filipino. I went on a Mormon mission to the Philippines. I speak some French because I lived in Europe for 6-7 years. I speak a teeny bit of German. But like even like my experiences there, it's like, would I love to speak Spanish? Of course I would love to speak Spanish. Do I want to muddle through it for 5 or 6 years looking like a complete buffoon while I'm doing it? No. And for me, that's enough to not try to learn a new language, because I'm not going to go out and be like, mi casa es su casa, and then be like, I speak perfect English, asshole. And you're like, I'm practicing I'm trying to be better myself.
I'm just trying to get better.
Yeah. Can't I just get better? And they're like, yeah, but not on my watch, because that's annoying. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I don't think anyone who's listened to the past few episodes would think that you're the person who's really just gonna go out there. I keep coming back to like the question about what were your goals when you were younger? And you're like, goals? Hell, I didn't have goals. I was just living my life and crushing everything I tried. Yeah. That was it. I think that's also like, you got to admit who you are. Yeah. Right. Not everybody listening is like, I want to learn a language or I'm going to start a martial art.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I would like to be good at martial arts, but I don't want to go get my ass kicked by some 12-year-old kid initially and then be like, welcome to the club, 45-year-old man. And I was like, no, I'm not. And I'm not buying the yellow belt because I'm not wearing a yellow belt. I want the black belt right off the bat or nothing. Because I don't want to look.
I could just buy one.
Yeah.
They're $35. I don't have to. It's like when you buy the like Harvard law t-shirt.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't study law.
Or a degree from a university online. Like there's a lot of things you can do to show off without having to actually do. And I'm not about, I don't need to show off a thing that I'm not really doing. But like, I don't like to be in those situations where I am the novice.
Yeah.
There's very few of those.
I get
where
that. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable and it's very out of my comfort zone. So I did want to ask you though, Bradley, you lived the Hollywood dream, chased the Hollywood dream. How was that with your self-image?
I mean, I grew more in my first 3 years in LA than I ever did anywhere else. It was it was humbling, a lot of times humiliating. It was out of my comfort zone. It was a lot of times just like really depressing and sad. And then other times it was like, this is amazing. So I think the hardest part for me, there's so many stories. I mean, I have so many stories of like utter failure.
And people are telling you you're not good. Like, I'm not saying like personally, but like you go to a place and they're like, you're not the right guy for us. Like, that's got to wear and grind on people's confidence to a certain degree. Some people.
Yeah, I think that the hardest part of that, and it's definitely different for guys than it is for girls. I've had lots of conversations with Kirsten about her experience there. Part of her book that she's writing, it's coming out next year. #plug, Kirsten Lyons, author. Is about, you know, a woman's experience there is so much more physically related. You're not tall enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not hot enough, you're not whatever enough. And so much of that is just physical, so it's kind of hard to change. Yeah. Whereas for guys, it's a little bit less that until you get old and you're like, well, now you're the dad instead of the lead son. Instead
of the hot dude with his shirt off all day long.
Yeah, with tats. And
now you're wearing a medium baggy sun shirt.
It's a little
There's
too
a
short.
Place for that. There's a place for that guy too, but he's usually not on the movie poster. Yeah, man, it was so hard. It was also because I have a college degree. Why am I working in 2 restaurants and I can barely afford bus fare to get into the Valley to do this thing when my friends were buying houses and having kids and living their life? And so there were a lot of those moments where it was like, what am I doing? And like, who am I? You know, and I tried all kinds of things. I was taking hip hop classes. I was doing stand up. I did background work. I shadowed directors. I was in acting classes. I was casting director workshops. Like, I did it all. And it didn't turn out how I wanted it to. You know, at that time, I don't wish that my life were any different from now, because hindsight, you know, you see a lot of people who've come through that system and they're not quite the people that I think they would want to even be if you'd asked them before going in who they've become at the end of that. But yeah, your self-image gets really kicked around because you're like, I was the funniest guy in my school. I was the funniest guy in my college. All my friends said, go to LA, you know, and then you're like, you're just one of, you walk into a room. It's just like, I mean, LA Story was such a great example of like the life of being in LA. You're like, I'm funny. I'm great. You walk into a room and you're like, wait a second, there's 30 other guys who look very similar to me that are all out here and want it just as bad as me. And there's one line role for a server in a restaurant, and I didn't even get that. Like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? You know, like I couldn't even pay my rent a month at a time. I worked 2 restaurants. I had to pay my landlord a week at a time. And I'm just thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? And at some point you just think, maybe it's me. Actually, a lot of times you think maybe it's me. And so the hardest thing I think to do, and luckily I had good acting coaches and teachers that were like, you have to keep being you. You can't try to be who you think they want, because then if you don't get it, then you're like, oh, but that's not me. I was actually more this way. But everything's an audition. LA is a tough place to live anyway. You walk into a restaurant, everyone stops, turns, the door opens, they look. Are you worth looking at some more? Oh, you're a nobody. Let me go back to my food. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. CVS is a scene. What are you wearing when you walk in the drugstore? Like, it is, it Ralph's. Can be really, oh yeah, Ralph's for sure. You know, everybody's working out, everyone. The upside to it though, William, you mentioned it before too, which is like, I realized I could be anybody I want out here. Nobody knows me and no one cares. Everyone's too self-consumed. So I was like, at some point I was in like the faux hawk, like had hair in a faux hawk and was like was this like Rockin' Republic jeans. And I was like, I was in that mode because I was like, I don't know who
you were
I
being
am.
A Brad. So you were kind
I was
of like
being a Brad.
You were
That's
being
exactly right.
Yeah.
I was bradding out.
Yeah.
And
did it feel good to brat out for a little bit like that, or are you embarrassed of that?
You know what it was? If you're on a long road trip and you get bored, sometimes you just like go over the rumble strips to kind of wake up again.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. I didn't know who I was because I'd grown up in the South. I lived in the same place. I went to college in the same town. It's a big school, but still similar friends. This was really where all of a sudden it was like, no one knows you. No one cares. Now what?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, so my self-image really came out of growing up in that. Okay. And really having to thicken my skin up in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's a great question, but it's a tough, man, it's a tough grind. I'm not that reality show celebrity is an easy move for you as well. Or an artist like William, where someone could be like, you said earlier, Tyson, someone's like, I'll shoot that with my GoPro.
Yeah.
You're like, well, no, you couldn't. And also fuck off, you know?
Yeah.
So these are not easy.
You must have a really nice camera.
Oh yeah.
That's a great
even worse,
photo.
right?
You must
I've
have
seen
a really
memes
good
where people
camera.
are like, "Oh, your camera takes great shots," and then they're like the meme is just like me with the camera, like waiting for my camera to take a great shot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's why don't you put on your in your bio on Instagram that everything's shot with an iPhone 10 or something hilarious.
iPhone 5,
iPhone
that's
7,
a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think about that too, but for reality TV, like I was just selected. Like I wasn't like trying and
Right.
like going to tons of stuff. I auditioned one time and got it and was like, didn't care. And so
They liked you because you were you.
Correct.
Which is kind of nice.
Correct. Yeah. That was just another. And for me, like I assumed that it would all work out because I'm kind of an asshole. So I like rolled in and I was just like, they're like, what if you don't get it? I was like, well, you're lost.
That's not going to happen.
I gave you what I have. And if you don't like it, then that's your loss and your show can be a little worse than it would have been. Like that, it was.
It takes that level of arrogance, honestly, though. It takes that level of like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Because otherwise it's too exhausting to try to catch up with critics or play this moving target of like, that's cool, that's neat, that's what they want, this is what they want.
Yep, it's true. So I think lessons here are be yourself, make progress somewhere, somehow, something that's exciting, something that's new. I actually am going to try something new. I'm going to look for something new to try and do
and
it.
Report back next week.
Oh, in a week? I have to do it within a week?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to start it, but like maybe what you're thinking. I'll do the same.
Okay.
William's already out there rebuilding his house. He's got enough going on.
He's a badass.
He is.
Maybe like tightrope walking, Tyson. I could see you doing that.
I actually followed accounts of people on slack lines, but I've tried a slack line one time and feel like an idiot.
It's so hard.
It's so hard, dude.
Hard.
I can't get over that hump of learning and having someone see me trying to learn that. Because you see like dudes just jump on there and be like, do like all the circus stuff. Yeah, it looks easy. And so I step on, I'm like, whoa. I'm not doing that. No. I had something in my head. I forgot what it was. So I'm going to circle back to it and I'll let you guys know. So
can't wait to hear.
Yeah. Thank you all for tuning in, for watching us go through our Midlife Crisisses live on YouTube and everywhere you can listen to podcasts. We're there. See you next week.
See you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.